Hi, it's me, Storyteller Mitch, with some more queer for you. Didn't do much this week because, well, I babysit, so I was watching some kids all week, and it's been tiring. Anyway, some more queer. And we're on chapter 3. Actually, let me move this down a bit, that way you're not kind of stuck staring. And yes, this is a Hellraiser shirt. It's got Pinhead on the back. I can't remember where I got it. Sorry. Some website. A long time ago. Chapter 3. It was a beautiful, clear afternoon in April. Punctuality at 5, we walked into the ship ahoy. Allerton was at the bar with Al Hyman, a periodic alcoholic, and one of the nastiest, stupidest, dullest drunks Lee had ever known. He was, on the other hand, intelligent and simple in manner, and nice enough when sober. He was sober now. Lee had a yellow scarf around his neck and a pair of two-pace sunglasses. He took off the scarf and dark glasses and dropped them on the bar. A hard day at the studio, he said, in effective theatrical accents. He ordered a rum coke. You know, it looks like we might bring in an oil well. They're drilling now over the quadrangle fort, and from that rig you sorry, could almost spit over into Tex-Mex where I got my 100-acre cotton farm. I always wanted to be an oilman, Hyman said. Lee looked him over and shook his head. I'm afraid not, you see. It isn't everybody can qualify. You must have the calling. First thing, you must look like an oilman. There are no young oilmen. An oilman should be about 50. His skin is cracked and wrinkled like mud that has dried in the sun, and especially in the back of his neck is wrinkled. And what the heck is wrong with me today? It's just water. Try again. Okay. His skin is cracked and wrinkled like mud that has dried in the sun, and especially the back of his neck is wrinkled. And the wrinkles are generally full of dust from looking over blocks and quadrangles. He wears garbadine slacks and a white short-sleeved sports shirt. His shoes are covered with fine dust. A paint haze of dust follows him everywhere like a personal dust storm. So you got the calling and the proper appearance. You go around taking up leases. You get 5 or 6 people lined up to lease you their land for drilling. You go to the bank and talk to the president. Now, Clem Ferris, as fine a man as there is in his valley, and smart too, he's in this thing up to his balls. And Old Man Scanton and Fred Crockley and Roy Spigot and Ted Bain, all of them good old boys. Now let me show you a few facts. I could sit here and gas all morning, taking up your time, but I know you're a man accustomed to dealing with facts and figures, and that's exactly what I'm here to show you. He goes out to his car, always a coupe or a roadster, never saw an oilman with a sedan, and reaches in the back of the seat and gets out his maps. A huge bundle of maps as big as carpets. He spreads them out on the bank president's desk, and great clouds of dust spring up from the maps and fill the blank. You see this quadrangle here? That's Tex-Mex. Now there's a fault runs right along here through Jed Marvin's place. I saw old Jed too the other day when I was out there. A good old boy. There isn't a finer man in this valley than Jed Marvin. Well now, Saccone drilled right over here. He spreads out more maps. He pulls over another desk and anchors the maps down with cup-siders. Well, they brought in a dry hole in this map. He unrolls another one. Now if you'll kindly sit on the other end so it don't roll up on us. I'll show you exactly why it was a dry hole and why they should never have drilled there in the first place. Because you can see just where this fault runs smack between Jed's Artisan Well and the Tex-Mex line over into Quadrangle 4. Now that block was surveyed last time in 1922. I guess you know the old boy done the job. Earl Hoot was his name. A good old boy, too. He had his home up in Nacogdoches, but his son-in-law owned a place down here. The old Brooks place up north of Tex-Mex just across the line from ... By this time the president is punchy with boredom and the dust is setting down in his lungs. Oilmen are constitutionally immune to the effects of dust. So he says, well, if it's good enough for those boys, I guess it's good enough for me. I'll go along. So the oilman goes back and pulls the same routine on his prospects. Then he gets a geologist down from Dallas or somewhere who talks some gibberish about faults and seepage and intrusions and shale and sand and selects some place more or less at random to start drilling. Now the driller he has to be a real rip-snoring character. They look for him in Boys Town, the whore district in border towns, and they find him in a room full of empty bottles with 3 whores. So they bust a bottle over his head and drag him out and sober him up. And he looks at the drilling site and spits and says, well, it's your hole. Now, if the well turns out dry and the oilman says, well, that's the way it goes. Some holes got lubrication and some as dry as a horse cunt on Sunday morning. There's one oilman, Dry Hole Dutton they called him. All right, Allerton, no cracks about Vaseline, brought in 20 dry holes before he got cured. That means get rich insulting lingo of the oil fraternity. Joe Guidry came in and Lee slid off his stool to shake his hands. He was hoping Joe would bring up the subject of queerness so he could gouge Allerton's reaction. He figured it was time to let Allerton know what the score was. Such a thing as playing it too cool. They sat down at the table. Somebody had stolen Guidry's radio, his riding boots and wristwatch. The trouble with me is, said Guidry, I like the type that robs me. Where you're making your mistake is bringing them to your apartment, Lee said. That's what hotels are for. You're right, but half the time I don't have money for hotels. Besides, I like someone around to cook breakfast and sweep the place out. Clean the place out. I don't mind the watch and the radio, but it really hurt losing those boots. They were a thing of beauty and joy forever. Guidry leaned forward and glanced at Allerton. I don't know whether I ought to say things like this in front of a junior here. No offense, kid. Go ahead, said Allerton. Did I tell you how I made a cop on the beat? He's the vigilante, the watchman out where I live. Every time he sees the light in my room, he comes in for a shot of rum. Well, about 5 nights ago, he caught me when I was drunk and horny, and one thing led to another, and I ended up showing him how the cow ate the cabbage. So the night after I made him, and I was walking by the beer joint on the corner, and he comes at Baracho and says, have a drink. I said, I don't want a drink. So he takes out his pistola and says, have a drink. I proceeded to take his pistola away from him, and he goes into the beer joint to phone for reinforcements. So I had to go in and rip the phone off the wall. Now they're billing me for the phone. When I got back to my room, which is on the ground floor, he had written El Puto Gringo on the window with soap. So instead of wiping it off, I left it there. It pays to advertise. The drinks kept coming. Allerton went to the WC and got in a conversation at the bar when he returned. Guidry was accusing Hyman of being queer and pretending not to be. He was trying to explain to Guidry that Hyman wasn't really queer, and Guidry said to him, he's queer and you aren't, Lee. You just go around pretending you're queer to get in on the act. Who wants to get in on your Who wants to get in on your tired old act? Lee said. He saw Allerton at the bar talking to John Dume. Dume belonged to a small clique of queers who made their headquarters in a beer joint in Campeche called the Green Lantern. Dume himself was not an obvious queer, but the other Green Lantern boys were screaming fags who would not have been welcome at the Ship Ahoy. Lee walked over to the bar and started talking to the bartender. He thought, I hope Doobie tells him about me. Lee felt comfortable in dramatic. Something I have to tell you routines, and he knew, from unnerving experience, the difficulties of casual come-on. I'm queer, you know, by the way. Sometimes they don't hear right and yell, "What?" Or you toss in, if you were as queer as I am." The other yawns and changes the subject, and you don't know whether he understood or not. The bartender was saying, "She asked me why I drink. What can I tell her? I don't know why. Why did you have a monkey on your back? Do you know why? There isn't any why, but try to explain that to someone like Jerry. Try to explain that to any woman." Lee nodded sympathetically. "She says to me, why don't you get more sleep and eat better? She don't understand, and I can't explain it." Nobody can explain it. The bartender moved away to wait on some customers. Jume came over to Lee. "How do you like this character?" he said, indicating Allerton with a wave of his beer. Allerton was across the room talking to Mary and a chess player from Peru. He comes to me and says, "I thought you were one of the Green Lantern boys." So I said, "Well, I am." He wants me to take him around to some of the gay places here. Lee and Allerton went to see a Cocteau's Orpheus. In the dark theater, Lee could feel his body pull towards Allerton, and an amoeboid protoplasmic protojected, straining with a blind worm hunger to enter the other's body, to breathe with his lungs, see with his eyes, to learn the feel of his viscera and genitals. Allerton shifted in his seat. Lee felt a sharp twinge, strange, or dislocation of the spirit. His eyes ached. He took off his glasses and ran his hand over his eyes. When they left the theater, Lee felt exhausted. He fumbled and bumped into things. His voice was toneless with strain. He put his hand up to his head from time to time, an awkward, involuntary gesture of pain. "I need a drink," he said. He pointed to a bar across the street. "There," he said. He sat down on a booth and ordered a double tequila. Allerton ordered rum and coke. Lee drank the tequila straight down, listening down into himself for the effect. He ordered another. "What did you think of the picture?" Lee asked. "Enjoyed parts of it." "Yes," Lee nodded, pursuing his lips and looking down into his empty glass. "So did I." He pronounced the words very carefully, like an elocution teacher. Elocution teacher. Sorry about that. "He always gets some interesting effects." He laughed. Euphoria was spreading from his stomach. He drank half the second tequila. And the interesting thing about Cocteau is his ability to bring the myth alive in modern terms. "Ain't that the truth?" said Allerton. So this part is. Okay, I'm gonna do the next part later. Right? Thank you very much for listening. Have a good one. Ciao.